Welcome to How Seamless Omnichannel Payments Drive Sales, sponsored by PayPal. Here's our host, co-founder and MRC Director Emeritus of Merchant Risk Council, Julie Ferguson.
Welcome and thank you for joining. I'm Julie Ferguson, CEO and co-founder of the Merchant Risk Council. We're a nonprofit global membership association whose mission is to educate payment and fraud professionals. Today, I'm talking with two experts, and we're talking about how merchants can leverage seamless omni-channel payments to drive growth. We hope this is going to be an engaging conversation that provides actionable insights to take back to your business. You'll be able to find more information about all of this in the resource section at the bottom of the event site. We're also curious to know how you enjoyed today's event. So whenever you get a chance, please take our survey, which you can do by clicking at the link at the bottom of the event site here on insider.com. Omnichannel payments unify the shopping experience for customers and merchants, whether it's taking place in person or online. Omnichannel's been around for a really long time. We've seen mass adoption of things like buy online and ship to store, buy in store, things like scan and go, and so many other things that are starting to emerge. The lines between the physical and the online are really truly blending. We're even seeing this spread across industries you might not think of traditionally, like doctor's offices. I'm now able to check in ahead of time and make my copay. So when I arrive at the office, all I have to say is I'm here. Same with hospitals. Or when you're at a hospital, they might hand you an iPad to do an online experience in the physical location. We're even seeing convenience stores and grocery stores really jumping into that omni-channel experience as well with things like curbside pickup. So much is changing fast. The pandemic certainly accelerated it, but the consumer benefits and convenience really have just made it a great thing for everybody across the board. 85% of commerce is still online in the physical stores, according to the US Census Bureau, but e-commerce continues to grow every year. The other thing is merchants really need to provide lots of different options. NRF actually said that 50% of retailers currently offer or plan to offer ship from store capabilities, and 2/3 of retailers today actually offer or plan to offer buy online and pick up in store. I know as a consumer, I'm actually starting to depend on those, and I actually feel frustration instead of excitement and delight when those features are not available. So today's customers really are expecting that seamless, personalized omni-channel experience, and merchants really need to understand the customer journey across the channels. So when you're buying online or in person or wherever you're located, you really need to be well educated and help the brand show up holistically across all those channels. So today we're talking to Cindy Turner, who's Vice President and General Manager of PayPal Braintree, who helps merchants actually implement all these solutions, and Adam Cronengold, who's the Chief Digital Officer at Authentic Brands, who's working on digital initiatives across a portfolio of renowned global brands. So welcome, Cindy and Adam. I'm so excited that you guys are here today. And Adam, I'd love for you to start off by sharing a little bit more about the work you do, your brands, and your involvement with payments.
Yeah, sure. Well, first and foremost, a bit about Authentic for those who aren't familiar. So Authentic is a global platform with a portfolio of nearly 50 brands spanning both lifestyle and entertainment. We own brands such as Reebok, Nautica, Forever 21, Sports Illustrated. We're partners with Shaquille O'Neal and David Beckham and many, many more. At the core of our platform is licensing, so leveraging best-in-class partners, operators, distributors, and retailers who take our intellectual property and help build long-term value. Annually, we generate over $29 billion in retail sales across the portfolio. We're very active in the M&A space. Just this year alone, we acquired Vince, Hunter, and most recently Board Riders, which consists of Quicksilver, Billabong, Roxy, Ruka, DC Shoes, Element, and Von Zipper. But from a digital perspective, our job is to connect the dots across the various businesses through e-commerce and omnichannel optimization, enterprise technology partnerships, customer data, and centralized marketing.
That's a lot of brands and a lot of work, Adam. Thanks for sharing. And Let's jump right into it. So, what are omni-channel payments and how do you define them? Why should omni-channel payments be at the top of the agenda for merchants? Cindy, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Great. I'm Cindy Turner, and I am the VP and General Manager of PayPal Braintree, which is a full stack payments provider that processes more than $500 million of payments volume globally. In addition to processing many of the leading global e-commerce brands, including Uber, Airbnb, and Live Nation, we also do in-person volume at leading brands, including many within Authentic's portfolio and other retailers such as Vineyard Vines. When I think about omnichannel payments as a provider, my goal is to make it as easy as possible for merchants to be able to service their customers. We all understand that consumers show up across many different channels and they have an expectation to have a consistent experience. So my goal is always to deliver a tool set to our merchants that allow them to have consistency in their consumer experience, whether that's in the reconciliation of the data in the back end, the platform tools that allow them to connect and be able to reverse a transaction or refund a transaction, regardless of which channel that transaction generated from, and to be able to operationalize their tooling, whether that's for chargebacks or to secure, to store a credential in a secure vault.
Thanks. And Adam, from your perspective, how do you think about this?
Yeah, like Cindy said it, for Authentic, the omnichannel experience is really about consistency. That's the big word. Consistency regardless of where the customer is shopping, whether that means enabling seamless transactions in store, online, or even through emerging channels like social commerce. Our goal is to remove friction across the board.
So, Adam, when you're thinking about this, can you talk a little bit about the business opportunities when it comes to seamless customer experience?
Yeah, so Authentic's business challenges actually are a direct result of what's also brilliant about our model. So it's really a double-edged sword, and I'll explain that. So we acquire large companies like Reebok, like Eddie Bauer, and we find best-in-class operators around the world to license our IP by category. So while that financial model has proven to be extremely successful for us, we have historically had to solve the challenges of disparate operations around the world with different technology stacks. You asked about opportunity. So the big opportunity for us is unifying key elements of those technology stacks and then building the proverbial highways to connect those businesses in ways that benefit the consumer. So I'm talking about things like shared loyalty, shared cart, shared returns, shared payment vaults, which obviously PayPal is facilitating for us. It's those key initiatives that have really transformed Authentic from a parent company to a platform over the past several years.
That sounds impressive and hard. So let's talk a little bit about the specific opportunities and how they can solve those. So, Cindy, what do you see in the marketplace?
Yeah, I think that we've created some really unique use cases that the payment providers are trying to help our merchants solve for. One example might be if you first attract a customer in a store and you're looking to add them to your loyalty program, you want to collect all of the elements of their identity. So, their email address, their phone number, but then you also want to connect that to a payment method, which can then help reduce friction the next time that consumer shops if they've then logged into an app or they're on the website. So to be able to facilitate, the storage of the credentials into a single vault, that you attain that transaction and that credential first in person, but be able to carry it over into the other channels. I think now everyone talks about, buy online, pick up in store, buy online, return in store. Maybe you're in store and you want to purchase something that isn't currently in the inventory and you want to have it shipped to your house. I think that's the basic level of omnichannel that everyone needs to deliver at this point. But to be able to take that into a merchant's back end and into their operations so that it's completely seamless for them, so that the accounting works the same regardless of where that consumer transaction happened from a channel perspective, and to make sure that the operations can really run very cleanly. The third leg of it to me is about loyalty. And so, the consumer shows up into the store and they have an expectation that that salesperson behind the counter can see the entirety of their relationship with that retailer. So being able to push the data into a place that that person behind the front desk of the store can see the transaction history, can do a refund in person without you having to pull out a card and be able to push it to a card that you may or may not have with you. Those are all the unique use cases that we're thinking about and always trying to deliver.
Yeah, I will tell you as a consumer, it used to be I was delighted when I was able to buy something online and return it in the store, but it really has become table stakes. And what consumers are now expecting. So that omni-channel, it's bringing all those shopping experiences together under one experience, and it really opens up a lot of possibilities. But how do you provide a great experience in store and online? So Adam, let's start with you. I know you've had to tackle that.
Yeah, well, first of all, Cindy just covered a lot of the nuts and bolts of it, but I'll speak more philosophically. So in working with our operators, our mantra is always to remove as much friction as possible. I mentioned that earlier. So making it difficult for customers to hand you their hard-earned money is the ultimate retail sin, and that's something that Nick Woodhouse and Jamie Salter, that's the president and then the CEO of Authentic, respectively, they have always instilled that in us. So whether we're enabling convenient and trusted checkout online or streamlining transactions in store through various APMs, as an example, our goal is always to make sure that the customer shopping at our brands, it's not a chore for them.
Okay, great. And then Cindy, from your perspective, how do you view this and tackle that?
Yeah, one of the things PayPal is spending a lot of time thinking about is how can we deliver a payments ready identity to the merchant at the moment of checkout. So how can we take everything that we know about who that person is and whether on a digital basis we can identify their geolocation, the data elements associated with how they come, whether or not they're returning user to that site or it's somebody that we recognize from other properties. How can we think about that identity and then pair it with a credential that we know that consumer wants to use to pay and still put them in charge of the transaction where they can be the one who facilitates the checkout, but without needing to recall the card or bring the card into the process. So when we talk about friction, removing friction, that's really what we're trying to think about when it really can help the merchant maximize their conversion in that moment so that every sale that they get someone to the cart, it is a single click to be able to get to the point of checkout.
How does a strong omni-channel payment system help drive revenue and meet customer expectations? You guys both use the phrase removing friction. And so that always leads me to think, how do you measure those? How do you create the KPIs and how do you track them for success? And Adam, I'll start with you.
Sure. At Authentic, omni-channel payments allows us to have a more unified view of the customer across in-person and online channels. That's what Cindy was just referencing. So, look, customer data is a huge foundation of Authentic's overall business strategy. So, being able to enrich our first-party data with additional insights is extremely valuable. And at the end of the day, you asked about KPIs. Conversion is our key metric across the board. And that unified view of the customer certainly helps drive conversion.
And just one quick question on that, Adam. When you talk about conversion, is it different metrics in the different channels, or are you trying to achieve an overall conversion?
We look at the business holistically. Obviously, each channel is going to have different metrics that we track. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure the cash register is ringing. And if it's not, regardless of the channel, then we're not doing our jobs.
Okay. And then Cindy, from your perspective, how do you guys look at KPIs and those types of metrics?
Yeah, I'm always looking across the merchant base at the very interrelated KPIs of auth optimization, fraud optimization, so trying to reduce the fraud, and then cost optimization. So when you think about the auth optimization, the goal of every merchant is to convert 100% of their good customers to be able to close that sale. So that's about conversion. And then once the customer introduces a payment type, you want to close that sale. So you want to make sure that they're able to secure the sale on that card. Only 90% of authorizations go through today. So why do some authorizations not go through? Sometimes it's an outdated card. So have we updated the card? Have we tokenized the card, which then the issuers give more confidence and trust to a card that has been tokenized? So have we done that? Have we retried the transaction? If we have a transaction that doesn't even need to close in that exact moment, can we hold the retry for 2 or 3 days and try it again on a Friday when consumers have more cash in their debit accounts? So all of these elements of authorization optimization is about trying to help maximize the revenue associated with the checkout. The other side of maximizing revenue is about lowering your fraud risk. So you don't want to create a property that's going to allow for card testing. You don't want to create a property that's going to have, a significant amount of fraud, where a fraudster is trying to use cards that they purchase on the internet to get goods shipped to them, which they can go resell in the black market. So all of that chargeback liability is incredibly expensive to a merchant. So we want to help them be able to screen for any potential fraud at the outset of the transaction. And then the third leg of this stool, so the auth optimization is about revenue, fraud is about reducing your fraud liability. And then there's cost optimization. So are there different ways that we can route that transaction that can lower the overall cost to the merchant? Are there ways that we can help the merchant be able to secure payment credentials that don't cost as much to process? So cost optimization, I think, is increasingly having as much attention by the merchant community as the revenue and auth optimization has for the last few years.
Yeah, and I know at the MRC, a lot of our members also talk about what I always refer to as the unhappy path, the refunds and the disputes, and making sure that you have KPIs around that part of the omnichannel experience as well. That can get really tricky really quick if you're not paying close attention to it.
I very much agree. Every time we're developing, a new payment method or pushing a new payment method out for our merchants, I always find myself saying, like, the devil's in the details. So that 5 to 10% of use cases where we need to be able to refund, we've got an authorization that we have to split the refund and only refund a piece of it, like the shipping fees, but not the goods. Managing against chargebacks, incremental off, like all these different elements. That's where so much of the cost is when you're a payments provider. And then for the merchants, so much of their cost is actually in the operationalizing of this. So making sure that they're building into their recon platform so that they can recognize their revenue, making sure that they're building into their shipping platform so that if they end up shipping over 2 different days, they've split that transaction so that they're compliant with network rules. It's an incredibly complex business that is one of the things that I probably love the most about the space.
Yeah, there's never a dull moment, and we are always learning, and it's always changing for sure. And I really like your take on the different edge cases, because they're common edge cases, right? So they're definitely something you have to think about when you're implementing. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about data. So data makes a difference for customers and the customer experience, but it also makes it a lot easier for merchants to manage the process on the back end. So Adam, I know you've mentioned a couple times, managing that data and leveraging it for a great customer experience. So let's start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I referenced our customer data platform before, but to dive in deeper, Authentic has over 200 million unique customer data files in what I would describe as a very robust environment. So for us, we primarily leverage the customer data for business intelligence and performance marketing. So on the BI side, having insight into consumer preferences allows us to educate and inform our licensees on what's resonating with our customers. And I'll tell a quick story. So when we acquired one of our brands and we ingested that customer data into our environment, we found that the customer was actually 5 times more likely to purchase plus sized apparel, even though the brand historically didn't offer larger sizes. We found that out through ingesting third-party data. This information that we were able to take to our new brand licensee to inform the go forward product assortment, it makes all the difference in the world, and it's value add that we bring to our operators. On the performance marketing front, we've seen a huge boost in ROAS when using predictive models based on transactional data and clickstream behavior. I'm talking 5 times ROAS compared to baseline audiences using predicted CLV for segmentation, just as an example. So extremely important. Data effectively powers everything in our business.
So Adam, I'm going to ask you to kind of explain, what does ROAS and CLV mean for some of the folks in our audience who might not be familiar with those terms?
Yeah, so when I talk about ROAS, it's return on ad spend. So for every dollar we put out there in performance marketing, what are we receiving back in revenue? Oftentimes having powerful data obviously increases that return on ad spend because your ads are more targeted. You can personalize the ads based on the information you have. So it's all to drive sales, but also put in front of the customer what's relevant and driving that lifetime value, which is what I was referencing before.
So the CLV is the lifetime value.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right, great. And then Cindy, what's your take on that?
Yeah, there's so many ways that PayPal is thinking about how data can power all of our different product areas. Let me hit a couple of them. So first, identity. I talked a little bit about identity, but our goal is to be able to deliver a payments-ready identity to the merchant at the point of sale. So in a in-store environment, imagine if you can just show up and we know the merchant already knows who you are and knows what your preferred way to pay is. You can then just check out. We actually are just in the process of lighting up a just walk out program with one of our retailers, where you're able to be recognized on the way in, and because of a ticket, it's an event-based merchant. So because of the ticket on the way in, we can associate a payment method with that, and then be able to close the sale as that consumer kind of walks around a stadium. So really exciting use cases, both in person, but also online, when you're able to take that identity, pair it with a preferred payment method, and then just remove all the friction that's associated with the payment process for the merchant. Secondly, fraud. I mean, this is a space that is just so natural for the use of data. So PayPal processes over $1.5 trillion. So you can imagine the data patterns that we're able to recognize. What we do with our fraud tools is we leverage that entire ecosystem of $1.5 trillion of volume. We're able to see a card that's getting tested. So we may see that a card testing is happening in one of our consumer portfolios. We shut it down there, but then we know that that card, unless it's already a stored card with a known user and a known merchant, if it's getting introduced at a new merchant, it's highly likely to be associated with fraud. So we can protect the next merchant from accidentally ending up with a fraud liability associated. We can even go a step further. We know who that consumer is because we know who they are from a PayPal wallet perspective. We can send them a text message or give them an alert on their phone that says, hey, you might want to call your issuer. We're seeing some really unexpected activity associated with this card of yours. And we're a little bit worried about it. So we think that you should reach out to your issuer and see if you should get a new card issued. So the entire fraud space is really a place that like more is more. And when you can aggregate data in that kind of way across the consumer, across the scaled patterns of merchant behavior, you're just in so much of a better place to be able to fight the fraudsters. Next, in loyalty, I mean, loyalty and then the expansion of the wallet. So if you can take a customer who shows up in one of Adam's stores and you know that, maybe they're buying, sportswear in one of that stores, but you also know that that same customer is a common purchaser of kids' clothes, right? You can start to push to them parallel products that you know that they're also interested in. So being able to, again, take that identity and pair up shopping patterns and be able to bring that back to the merchant so that they can drive more sales in that same customer moment where they're able to close more easily. On the back end, we talked a little bit about the unhappy path. Disputes are a reality for merchants. And increasingly, I mean, the fraud disputes are ones that you want to block on the front. But increasingly, our merchants are seeing a lot of what we call first-party fraud. And that's a consumer saying, I didn't receive the item, the FedEx driver drove over the box, I ordered blue and it's purple, and filing a chargeback, even though the merchant knows that they shipped the right item, that it was delivered on the front door, that the consumer picked it up, and it wasn't damaged. So we also have a lot of tools where we can deliver an AI model to help them fight the dispute. So you don't want to fight disputes that you're not going to win because there's a cost associated with doing that. But if you can fight all the disputes that you actually can win, and you can pull all the data from that transaction, so the picture from the FedEx, you can pull, the iPad, that Cindy's iPad purchased this transaction, that this is her third time shopping here. The other 2 times she also did chargebacks. You can pull all of that data in and you can present it back to the issuer. It gives the merchant a much stronger use case to be able to win those disputes. And then finally, the area where we use a lot of data is really just serving up all of the data of the transaction back to the merchants in their reconciliation processes. So I have a special love for all of the people who work in the treasury and controller's offices at merchants. They have a really hard job. They're trying to recognize revenue on a daily basis, and they have this constantly changing ecosystem of data that they have to get from 3 or 4 different places, and it's got different formats and it's got different data elements associated with it. And some of the charges come later, and these disputes disappear. So being able to serve up all of that data in a way that can push into their reconciliation processes seamlessly can really reduce the operational burden at a merchant.
Thanks, guys. And I definitely have a fond respect for the Treasury Department as well. I know I ask sometimes what's keeping you up at night, and even just something as simple as how do you reconcile the taxes when you buy online and pick up in store, and then return at a different store. It gets really complicated really fast. And another big challenge that we see when we're talking about this is actually um, data privacy. And so I always encourage everybody to make sure when at the very start of implementing these solutions, you have Treasury at the table, but you also have your legal counsel and your privacy officer, in addition to payments and marketing and the development team. Adding them at the end of the process to review, hey, what do you guys think about this from a privacy perspective? Um, I have seen it many times create a whole bunch of work, and in fact, some processes have had to be reworked. So again, pull those people together at the start of implementation and make them a part of the team. Um, so all that we've talked about, how can retailers stay ahead and implement these solutions? I know partnerships are playing a big role, but Adam, how did you find the right partner?
Yeah. So look, finding the right partners is the most important piece of the puzzle for us. And again, that's really core to our business model as a whole. So of course, we have partners like PayPal in the digital space, but we also have crucial partners in licensing operations, retail. That said, just because a technology partner is right for the Authentic portfolio doesn't necessarily mean it's the best fit for any business. But in terms of what we look for in technology partners at Authentic, it's really about cost, scale, and creativity. So, cost, can we negotiate fair pricing for our portfolio of operators? That's usually an easy one, frankly, because of our size. Scale, can we seamlessly scale the technology solution across our business without doing a complicated and custom implementation per brand? And then lastly, creativity. Can we structure a partnership creatively that fits all of our unique business goals? For us, partners really need to check those boxes as table stakes.
That sounds pretty hard. What should merchants be looking for when they're looking to put in place a payment solution?
Yeah, sure. For us, specifically around payment solutions, looking at our partnership with PayPal, our decision came down to three main advantages. And I'm just realizing now that we tend to think in threes, so bear with me. But one, really operational efficiency. So standardizing our payment processing across our largest retail and e-commerce businesses allows us to optimize system innovations, reporting, which was referenced, technology integrations. Um, Secondly, frictionless transactions, and that's been a big theme here. So PayPal makes it easier and more seamless for our customers to transact through tools like their network tokenization, centralized vault, account updater, digital wallet, of course. All of those things lead to higher conversion and authorization rates, which are key for us. Um, and then lastly, really the theme is setting the foundation for omnichannel. So again, with PayPal specifically, their ability to integrate seamlessly with our OMS and allow customers to shop online and in store with their, PayPal and Venmo wallets, as an example, that lays the foundation for a robust omnichannel experience.
And Adam, I'm just going to toss back to you real quick. Can you explain to everyone what OMS stands for?
Yeah, that's your order management system. So that's the layer where a lot of these really complicated things are happening. And luckily for us, PayPal is really good at speaking to some of those technology layers.
Yeah, and I can't imagine with all the brands you support how difficult it must be.
Yeah, Adam, first of all, thank you for the complimentary view. That just makes my heart warm. Like, that's what we're trying to deliver every day. What I think my goal is as a provider to merchants is to deliver a best in class platform that helps work for you. So that's what it means in the enterprise space. is serving up tools that allow you guys to deliver your goals, whether that's authorization optimization, frictionless checkout, the components that we talked about of limiting your fraud, your better operations. What really makes PayPal unique here is that we have the ability to bring the consumer as well. So in addition to being a full-scale payments provider on the acceptance side or in the acquiring space, we also bring the consumer. So we bring all that knowledge of who that consumer is and what they do, as well as being able to leverage that data to drive some of these fraud tools and loyalty-based tools.
Okay, and we've actually had a couple of audience questions come in, so let's kind of jump into those. So Adam, this one's for you. How long does it take to implement omni-channel solutions?
So all technology integrations look different. The one common denominator is that it always takes longer than you thought it was going to take to implement it. I will say, and not just because Cindy's on with us right now, PayPal has over-delivered massively when it comes to implementing their payment solutions across our stores and e-commerce so far. So we are way ahead of schedule thanks to their engineering team. But look, omni-channel implementations are complicated. It's never going to be a smooth road. It depends on how complex your operation is, but I would always sort of put a little buffer in there in terms of timing.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in on that, I think you have both the implementation where the team is coding, we're creating the endpoints, we're trading off to make sure the files are going to recon properly. That's the implementation phase. What I've really come to appreciate is there's also a ramping phase where we're taking from 1% of volume and taking it up to 100% of volume. The complexity there is that we launched a new, merchant ID or MID if you're in the industry. And the issuer has to get used to that. They have to learn who that merchant is, what their standard patterns of behavior are. So I would encourage every merchant who's considering a change to really think about how that provider can help manage that warming process or that ramp process. And sometimes some orchestration tools can really come in handy there, because you can take a transaction and you can attempt it first on one set of rails, but then you can retry it on another set that may be your old processor. So that's where we've seen a lot of success in being able to condense the time frame to really get fully ramped and fully up to speed.
And Cindy, you mentioned the warming process, and I actually think that's really important for folks on the call today to understand. Can you talk about the consequences, what might happen if you don't do that warming process?
Yeah, you get a lower authorization. So a good customer tried to transact and they get a decline because the issuer just sees as if it's a brand new merchant. So they might see like a pattern of behavior that they're not expecting associated with that merchant. Every issuer, I think, the beautiful complexity about payments is that at the end of the day, the issuer is the one who's in charge of deciding whether or not to let that transaction go through. And they're using a plethora of different inputs to do that. And sometimes they have really smart decisioning engines. Sometimes they have homegrown. Sometimes they have bugs in it. So, we had one moment we were launching something new, and we received feedback from a network that said, if you don't have anything to put in this field, you should put zeros. And when we did that, we just kept struggling with a lower auth rate, and we tried putting spaces instead of zeros. And even though we were following the specification of putting zeros, we actually had better behavior by putting spaces instead of zero. So what you find is that issuers have just built a decisioning system that's based on all the volume they've ever seen. And so every time you try to do something new, which is what the mid-warming process is, or the launch of a new processor or a new payment type, you're trying to do something new without an appreciation for all of the history that's run through those systems. So it's a game every day. But you want someone who's staffing a team that's thinking about this and building really smart AI on top of it that can take a field where you don't have information to drop in and try to decide if you put a space bar into it or if you put a zero.
Yeah, thanks. I don't think people understand that issuers are taking some risk if the merchant disappears. And so they really do look at that. Ooh, that might be a fraudulent merchant, right?
merchants also, or the issuers have a poor appreciation for how sales get aggregated for a given merchant on a certain day. So we had one issuer for a gaming merchant that turned off a mid because they saw a really high volume on a Sunday morning associated with that mid. And it turns out like that mid was a leading gaming company, right? So the Sunday was Super Bowl Sunday. And so an issuer, a top bank in the US, let their frequency controls and kind of a dumb black box machine accidentally limit their consumers' ability to transact on a merchant in a completely expected behavior of I want to make a bet right before the Super Bowl. So it's a constant exploration process, and it's really about having flexible tooling that lets you adjust in the moment.
Yeah, huge spikes that aren't at Christmas, I know, are very scary to issuers. And, there's Mother's Day, there's back to school, there's all kinds of different peaks for different industries. The next question that's come in is how can merchants keep evolving as the landscape changes? And I know we just had our conference, and one of the things that people mentioned is just the rate of change. In 2023, it's kind of we've already seen 1,500 changes from the card networks, and about 400 of those have either required some sort of development or new financial tracking. And so it's just constantly changing. So, Adam, how do you guys keep up?
Well, you said it. The shopping paradigm is constantly shifting and evolving more now than ever. I actually just got back from China last week, and how they're driving innovation around live shopping and in-store experiences is nothing short of incredible. Generally speaking, Authentic is a very inquisitive company. We're constantly exploring new ways to engage our customer and keep experiences fresh and relevant. And I'll tease a big initiative that we're working on right now, which is our cross-portfolio subscription membership product that's going to allow customers to receive benefits across all of our brands. This is something we've been developing for a long, long time, and developing it based on our customer data insights into the cross-shopping behavior. We believe this is really going to resonate with our customer base. So that's one example of how we're constantly trying to evolve as a platform.
I know that'll drive up loyalty. That sounds like a great initiative. And I know whenever I go to the APAC region, it's always driven home that as far as payments innovation, from the US perspective, we're usually in last place. Europe is ahead of us as well as APAC. And now LATAM with the real-time payments and PIX, right? It's all moving so fast, and there's so much change in every different region. So the last question here, do you have any advice for merchants ready to implement this strategy? And Cindy, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with understanding the types of use cases that you want to be able to create. So who is your consumer? How do they shop? How often do you see that same consumer across different channels? Do you want to be able to do some kind of subscription where you initiate transactions on their behalf? Or do you, every time you see the customer actually in person, are you storing their credentials? And then you need to talk to providers. So you need to find out how the providers can let those use cases come alive. And what does it look like for the consumer? I would always start first with asking them to walk through the consumer user experience that they're able to light up. But then don't underestimate the operational side for yourself. So how does the data flow into my environment? How can I pull up a transaction? How can I do a search? How am I going to run, dispute automation if I go forward with this? So, I think it's really, you're going to need to talk to a couple of potential providers and really pick someone who can service you across all of the different ways that you want to make your customers come alive.
All right, and Adam, same question to you.
Yeah, look, Cindy covered it and I referenced it before, but it's never going to be a one size fits all for every business. As long as you keep the customer at the center of your strategy, and you find the right technology partners to iterate, to evolve, and frankly to hold your hand a little bit, then I believe you're approaching the problem with the right solution. But I would also brace for twists and turns. And again, that's why it's so important to have the right technology partners around you who can adapt and problem solve.
Thank you so much, Adam and Cindy. And a big thank you to our audience. I hope you guys were inspired by this conversation. I know I was, and I learned a lot as well. Please remember to take our event survey at the bottom. We'd love to hear from you. And to learn more about how payments are evolving, there's a great book on evolving payments. It's an ebook that you can download right in the resources here on this event site. And to learn more about how PayPal is helping retailers, you can find more information in the business and enterprise sections on paypal.com. I'm Julie Ferguson. Have a great day.